Oh, Hoople's cat. Still need a haircut. In SHTF, an event, food complacency for preppers is going to be a major problem. The reason it's a major problem is most preppers have got 3 to maybe 6 months of food stored away for long-term storage. And simply put, that is not going to be anywhere near enough or adequate in any major global SHTF. So as we all keep saying, we're only 9 meals away from anarchy. I suspect we're only 3 meals away from anarchy if the 4th meal is extremely in doubt. That's just my personal opinion. But the question is, with most people not having more than 3 days supply of food in their homes, in a long-term global failure of the food supply for whatever reason, be pandemic or war or earthquake or hurricane, without external help coming, nuclear war, civil war, people are going to have some problems, and the people that should be having problems should not be you or me. Now, the major food complacency preppers have got is the 2,000 calories per adult a day diet. The bottom line is that's just not true. People are eating a lot more calories than that. Now, whether we should be or not is another matter. You can live off 2,000 calories. You can live off 800 calories per day, and you can live off it for many, many months to years. And people have done so, and some people I know are going to swear by low-calorie diets. The truth of it is, long-term, you're in a form of perpetual starvation, which alters the chemistry of the body quite dramatically. And no, I'm not going to put some diagrams up here for Steve Foco, but it does, and it also makes you much more likely to get diseases. And in grit down, they're going to be much more likely to kill you. So WebMD and other sites can calculate your actual needs now, and you need to assume that your needs now will be probably about what your need will be in SHTF. So the bottom line is, with 1/3 of us overweight and 1/4 of us being obese, and that's 1/3 plus 1/4, which means over 55% of North Americans are obese or fat going into grid down. Obviously, we've used to and experienced a time and place where food is not short. In fact, food is, in a way, far, far too abundant. So assuming you need 2,000 calories a day, you will need 730,000 calories per adult. But I would say assume 3,000 calories a day. So you're going to need just over 1 million calories a year per adult. Now there's 206 calories in a cup of white rice, uncooked. So you need 5,315 cups of white rice per year in calorie terms. Now be totally aware, you can't just eat white rice. Now some preppers are prepping like you can. You're going to get very, very sick and will die. But it's a good illustration of how many calories you actually need to think of it in terms of cups of uncooked white rice. So you're going to need 2,158 pounds of white rice in calorie terms per adult per year. Well, why not use sugar? Sugar's high calorie, right? Even if you use that, 1 cup of sugar is 1,755 calories, so you will need 624 cups of sugar a year. Now 4 cups of sugar is approximately a pound, so you need 156 pounds of sugar a year. Even sugar, that's a lot of sugar. But another major prepping food complacency is having long-term food stores and expecting to eat like you are now in SHTF. That's really, really bad and complacent. Unless you have massive stores that can last for many, many years, and we'll get into that, you're being very, very complacent if you eat normally in SHTF. So regardless of how much stores of food you have and the types of food you have, what I recommend is from day 1 of SHTF, radically cut your calories down. Boost them up on days that you feel stressed. Boost them up on days where you have a lot of work to do. Boost them up on days that you wish to celebrate the fact you made it. For me, my family, that's going to be Sunday. Not for a religious reason, because I think it's important to have 1 day in 7 where you eat well and relax and do little things that make life actually worth surviving. The other things I would recommend is that you have those mega balls of multivitamins from Costco's. Don't shop at Walmart, they're evil. The multivits, and you can get 365 for about $20 Canadian now. take one every other day, right? Because you'll just pee out the other stuff. And that's what I advise you do. I also advise you radically think about how you're going to eat and what you're going to do with the long-term food in grid down. Now, thankfully, famine has become fairly rare on the earth in recent years. I'm kind of a pessimist and I don't expect that trend to continue. But the ability to stretch and supplement stored food is a vital one for everybody. What we should all be doing is looking back to the Depression years for recipes and tips on how to stretch food for long-term use when there's no cash and no stores available. Of course, most of you won't be prepping for the apocalypse or society's fall, and that's just fine. And some of you will have followed the advice, in fact everybody should have, to have 3 days supply of food and water in store. The truth of it is that most of the government agencies that I've talked to one-on-one say 7 to 14 days, maybe even 21 days, is what you probably should actually be storing up, especially if you live in an area like Vancouver in Canada that can have earthquakes and tsunamis. Don't expect to get food and water dropped off to you the 4th day of a massive earthquake there. It may well be 3 weeks, and you may need to walk during that 3 weeks to actually get to a place where you can actually get supplies. But you also, in an event like that, need to be prepping a little bit for your neighbours. You're not going to be able to shoot them, and you probably shouldn't shoot them anyway, no matter what's going on. But it might be nice to be able to help people out. It might be able to help out co-workers and neighbours and family and friends for a week or so if you've got 2 to 3 weeks supply of food in. Think about that. Don't just prep for yourself. Prepping for yourself is selfish. And in most SHTF events, they will be localised and of short duration. Have some consideration about how you're actually going to take responsibility for your unprepped family, friends, neighbours. In a short-term event, step up to the plate. Be a man or be a woman and help people out. I have no affiliation to this group, but I do actually think this is a fairly reasonable and common way to prep. Certainly it's the way I did it, and I think you get this sort of advice in various formats from different websites and books. And it's actually absolutely a great idea. The problem with this chart, and it's a major one, is what are you going to do on day 121? Charts like this and prepping like this assumes, subconsciously or consciously, that the SHTF event leading to the use of long-term food stores will magically stop at the end of the 3-month period. Now, I don't think it will. I think anything that brings society down will keep society down for 1 year or more. And that includes a pandemic. Now, a nuclear war or another event of similar magnitude would keep society down for the rest of my life, even if I prep really well and I'm lucky and can live for a long time. Yeah, gardening and hunting and trapping and fishing and bartering and all of those things are a good idea. And maybe by day 121 all of those things are actually now safe to do. We'll be doing videos on them, but I don't consider it will be. I think where I am, I'll have to get through at least the first winter. So I'm looking for a minimum period of 6 to 9 months, and a year would be much better. And that would be a minimum period of calories I would have to store away for an SHTF event. In pounds of rice terms, 3 months supply of food for one person, one adult, is actually 540 pounds of rice, or 54 10-pound bags of rice. It's a lot of food. So if you're just storing for 3 months, you're going to have a lot of space, and you're going to have to actually make sure you have the space to actually store it. The cost of doing long-term food storage is not really as extreme as you might think. So most preppers have rotational racks, or they use the pantries, they rotate food, and they have that, and they pull food from the back and they pull it from the front and they rotate the food, and that's great. Now most people have the food in the basements, so if you have food in your basement, are you absolutely guaranteed that the basement cannot ever flood for whatever reason, or that the house will never burn down? Now you can take strong preps to avoid both of those incidents, but is there no chance of an earthquake or an explosion that will smash these stores? Now the major complacency I think most people have, and I had, was what about winter? Can you keep the stores cool, dry and from freezing if society has fallen and hasn't got back up again? Can you using long-term food stores like this without telling people that you've got food because of the waste or the smells of the burning of it? And even worse, Can you deal with the vermin and the infection problems you may encounter from waste products? Remember, for most people in SHTF, turning their tap on to clean stuff is not going to be a viable option. Don't get me wrong here, having long-term food stores and a variety of them is absolutely vital. What I think is the complacency part is the amount of food being stored and also the intention to eat normally in grid down. A lot of preppers will keep saying things over and over like, we have to keep eating normally or my family will be very distressed. Yeah, you know what, society is fallen. I think you can guarantee your family's going to be distressed. Your role is to provide calm and steady and reasonable support to them in that situation. And the last thing you need to do is to have them eating 3-4 meals a day, grabbing snacks and just eating like just Costco's going to be open in a month's time or 3 months' time when you know Costco's never opening again. That is not a good thing to do. That's complacent. So what do? You have all of your food, you have all of your white rice and stuff like that, and you have a few tins and a few vegetables and all this stuff. So I'm not going to go into the mechanics of what you eat and how you eat it, but you've got to reorientate your thinking from day one. Instead of having a half a tin of tuna per person, why not have half a tin of tuna for each 4 or 5 or 6 adults? Add that tuna to a lot more rice than you might be normally accustomed to eating. Instead of having a vegetable sized portion of rice, you have a bowl of rice and you add in a few things in scant amounts throughout the rice to make it more of an exciting meal. Think about it. Once it's gone, it's gone. The other major complacency is MREs, survival foods freeze-dried, and lifeboat rations. People are really complacent with that. So most of these are about 1200 calories a day, so you're going to eat a half to a third of what you actually need. So you're going to be starving. They're all the most expensive method of getting food per calorie. They are great for hiking, camping and bugging out when you are too sick to cook. But they are not a long-term food option. I'm sorry, they're not. If you're buying a year's supply of Mountain House or Legacy, you are throwing your money down the drain and you're not providing enough calories, enough variety of the food, and most of these foods are plain unhealthy. Society has fallen, so stop eating as if cancer and cardiac and diabetic care will remain for you and your family. It's simply put, you cannot rely on long-term food storage that is commercially available. It's being done for profit. The food they're using, generally speaking, is not healthy, nor will it last a long time given certain circumstances. What about survival tabs? I have never had a survival tab, and I've never bought survival tabs, and I never will. I think they're a classic product. They're basically a multivit with sugar. They're a total waste of money, they're extremely expensive, they're in no way at all food, and they're not in any way nutritionally balanced. They have no place in survival, none whatsoever. If you need that type of dense calorie in grid down or a survival situation, why aren't you using glucose tabs or candies? They're cheaper and they're better. They're also not that great for you because of glucose crash, but something's better than nothing. But nothing is better than wasting money on survival tabs. So the other two major issues I have with survival foods that are freeze-dried, one is OPSEC. To actually buy them in sufficient quantity for long-term food storage, you have to buy so much of them, and they're so bulky and so obvious what you're buying that the post or the UPS people are going to know you're delivering it, and probably your neighbour will as well. I mean, they're very bulky, and you're going to generate a ton of waste. But the other main issue with them is they're really not very healthy for you, and most of them won't last 5 years. Now, I know the ones in the plastic buckets are claiming to last 25 years, and that may be possible in certain circumstances, but that's relying on the container never freezing and never experiencing temperatures of over 20 centigrade or about 75 Fahrenheit, and staying bone dry and very little humidity in the air all the time. Now, I don't know about you, but in grid down I don't think I can provide that. I'd like to, but I don't think I can. The other thing is most of their calories are supplied by fructose, syrups, which aren't healthy for you because of farmer carbohydrate, but the other main ingredient are dairy fats, dairy solids. Simply put, they will go rancid. The reason they don't go rancid is because of the preservatives and chemicals that have been added to them, and the air has been removed. but I would not bet that in grid down conditions survival foods are going to last long enough to actually feed you in a safe way. They have very few variety and they are tailored to the standard American diet, the SAD diet. It's not a healthy diet now and it won't be an SHTF, and it's a massive quantity of cash. Even Legacy points out to people, if you keep them in an unheated garage, don't expect them to last as long as advertised. They ain't kidding. Now, you won't get to find that out from people that are selling Legacy foods and Mountain House foods to make profit. And there is that now occurring much more often in prepping videos, which is why I want to point out to you guys, I have nothing against commercialization of prepping, I just think it's wrong. I think it's wrong to prep for the end of cash and a society where people will die if they make the wrong decisions by selling people stuff that's far too expensive when they should be buying white rice and tins of vegetables and corn and packets of seeds and potting soil and all of that stuff. They shouldn't be spending thousands of dollars buying Legacy foods or Mountain House foods, or even worse, Thrive foods, which are really kind of ugh. So if you store normal food, it will last quite a long time and it will be cheaper than anything else, and you'll have more of it and you'll have much more variety of it, and it'll be much more nutritious for you, and it'll be much more easy to create different types of meals and different occasions, and you'll be good. Now remember, all fats will go rancid. Coconut oil, extra virgin and virgin only in glass containers unopened will last the longest, possibly up to 5 years. But almost all other oils and fats will expire within a 1 to 3 year range. So unless you bulk buy the day before SHTF, you will run into long-term food issues with oil going rancid. So be careful about what you're storing and why you're storing it. So base your long-term food storage on a normal diet that's going to be calorie reduced and needs to be more variety and needs to have easy cooking. The closer it is to a vegan diet, the cheaper it will be, and the easier it will be to continue that long-term stock into a period of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 years or even more. And that's a critical part of this. In a long-term grid down society failure, you want to have food stored in the 5th year and in the 10th year for when you are sick. If you just use the food and then try to replace that food, you are being complacent. What you need to do is use as little of the food as possible and then supplement what you're using with other additives, dehydrated vegetables, roasted seeds, that sort of thing, and canning. So have a look at this slide, and I think this is a good idea for most normal people. What you need to be doing though is altering it. Just ditch the dairy entirely. Dairy is extremely bad for you and has no place in the human diet unless you're a baby cow. And the other thing you should be ditching is most of the meats. Most of the tuna and chicken is the two varieties that people usually go on about, but if you are doing it, do what I do, have spam and ham as well. But instead of using half a tin or a full tin as for a meal, consider using half to 1 teaspoon per adult in a meal. Stretch the meal out, add more grains, add more vegetables. That's the way to eat in grid down. Large amounts of carbohydrates with scattered amounts of other stuff on top of it to make it palatable. You do not need anywhere near the protein you think you do. Now this is just a couple of slides just showing you a few things. It's showing you the ingredients lists. Now I am going to at some point do a video on ingredients lists because people just don't know how to read them. But when you look at these slides, the turkey sausage gravy isn't actually food. The first ingredient is cornstarch, and the second ingredient is palm oil, and the third ingredient is buttermilk powder, and then the next ingredient is dry milk, and then glucose, soda and sugar. The actual amount of meat in this, in fact you don't need meat, but the actual amount of meat in it is almost none. What you're eating is colorized, additive ridden glucose and fats altered. It's not healthy. It tastes great because it's been chemically designed to taste great. And have a look at this one here. This is the same thing. It's just not got enough calories and the food is not the greatest. It just really isn't. It's better. It's got rolled oats and brown sugar and a bit of canola oil and stuff like that. But then they start breaking the food down and adding, messing around. Instead of buying this as long-term food, why not just store oats and maple syrup? It's a lot cheaper and it'll last probably longer. And don't forget to add in lots of spices, lots of different types of spices, and know how to use them. Maybe buy 1 or 2 vegan grain recipe books, because that's what mostly you're going to be eating. Why have stored a lot of white rice but you don't have the capacity or the knowledge to actually make different foods from that white rice? Just boiled white rice, it's kind of boring with salt and black pepper, it's going to get on your nerves. And as a vegan, there's absolutely no need for that. There's lots of stuff you can do with white rice, and you can do with other things. But, you know, store some quinoa, store some chia seeds. Think a bit beyond the box of just white rice. They have lots and lots of spices available. Most freeze-dried stuff are very low calorie, very expensive, and fat-laden chemical messes. People that are promoting them online are promoting them because they have no clue how to read a product label, or they're getting cash. So if you listen to me and you get 2 years worth of food per adult in storage, that's going to be approximately 2 million calories per adult. That's a huge, vast quantity of food. So you want a variety of food, and you want it to be easily cooked, and water needs to be available. So that's other videos later on. But what about moving it? A lot of people have firm or semi-firm bug-out plans, and are car dependent. A lot of people have their food in their basement or their garages, and they plan to put it in the car and drive it to the bug-out. I really advise splitting your food supplies up now between the bug-out location and your home, and also consider friends, and also consider a second and third alternative bug-out. You don't have to put all of the food in one place. If you do that, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. That's never going to work out well, and you really shouldn't do it. You also need to have a plan for this food. So if you have the food and 2 to 3 adults per expected adult show up, you can shoot them all, right? And eat them, I guess. But it might be better if you actually plan now to actually have extra food calories available to deal with extra people arriving at the bug-out location who you actually don't want to shoot, and you actually think you may want to try to save. Do expect people to bring friends and neighbours and loved ones with them. They might be told not to, and you might have a firm policy of no admission, but in the actuality of SHTF, it might be nicer to have enough food on hand to be a little flexible where it's in the group's best interest to be so. For me, this slide is a nice representation of the actual calories you will actually need in SHTF based on fairly good and obvious criteria from human health, not just some mythical figure of 2,000 calories that people invented because it sounds good. In terms of cups of rice, this is actually 1,900 cups of white rice, which is actually 9,500 pounds of it. This is 952 bags of white rice for this normal family product. Wow. Are you complacent sitting on 3 to 6 months supply of food, expecting society to fall? You really need 1 to 2 years, and probably 3 to 5 is what you actually should be aiming for. Because honestly, if you're planning to hunt, forage and trap your way into providing 4 million calories for your family and grid down once your long-term food supplies have gone, I think you're being very complacent. And that's putting it nicely. You're going to need agriculture, and you're going to need some form of extended community to make that even worth doing. It's going to be extremely difficult. And in the initial phase of SHTF, we survive, and we survive by whatever we have and whatever means we have. And long-term food, and even legacy foods, have a place in that sort of a scenario. But don't run out of food the 3rd month or the 6th month. You're going to need at least a year, minimum, to get yourself to the position where you can actually sow and reap and weed and harvest and preserve food from a garden, from the soil. You're going to have to do that. You need to accept that now. Even if you're going to go off in the forest and hunt, taking 2 or 3 packs of seeds with you, that isn't going to cut it. You need thousands of seeds. And you want to make sure that rodents can't get access to this food either. So again, not only are you having to buy vast quantities of food, but you need to keep it cool and dry. You need to stop it from freezing or getting too hot, and you want to make sure it doesn't get burned or it doesn't flood. This slide is an approximation of a year's supply of food for an adult. As you can see, I would drop the jerky and the chicken. I think that's really expensive. I wouldn't get rid of it altogether, but I think there's a lot of food there. The food is really boring. I don't know if I could eat this for a year and not go out of my mind. what I would actually do is I would add in quinoa and amaranth and chia and different types of carbohydrate. I wouldn't just rely on white rice. I would have quite a lot of oatmeal. Oatmeal's a really good standby. I'd have maple syrups and I'd have a lot of different spices. You know, I'd have my cumin and my curry peppers and my hot peppers and all of that stuff. Quite cheap, and you can store them for an awful long time. The canned beans are a good idea, but you know, do you know how to cook with canned beans? Do you know what you're doing with that? Just having pinto dried beans, what a really bad move that is. Have a variety of dried beans. If you're going to go for canned beans, make sure you know how to use canned beans. Again, a vegan book can help you. For example, Kitty can make whipped cream from chickpea juice from a tin. Can you? That has a huge advantage in Grit Down. Not only for barter and trade, but it also has an advantage for taste and reliance on foods. To be able to take the waste juice from chickpeas and alter it slightly to make a form of cream, which is actually like a margarine, wow, that's a pretty great survival skill. She can also make cheese out of powder, not powdered milk, but out of powdered yeast. Think about it. I'm not saying go vegan. I think you should. I think it's a good idea for your health and for the environment. But being able to cook and eat like a vegan for most of Grit Down is going to be the most essential survival skill that you can teach your family to prove that you were not complacent in the time before the fall. So, just want to finish off with a couple of things. These 3 channels are excellent channels to show you how to preserve food that you're going to gather after the fall from your garden and from wild foraging and also from hunting. So it's very important that you're actually aware of these techniques and you have the equipment in place to use them, and you know how to reuse cooking, canning jars and stuff like that. Remember, there will be no waste in SHTF, and I hope you're not food complacent. I know I have been in the past, and I'm becoming less and less food complacent. When you talk about having 4 million calories for an average family of 4, that's a stunning amount. A stunning amount. Almost 600 bags of white rice, 10-pound bags of white rice, is what that looks like in terms of amounts of calories, not nutrition. So yeah, don't be complacent. Remember, in Grit Down, tomorrow will always be worse than today, so plan accordingly. Toodles.
Crawl in and the worms crawl out. The ones that go in are lean and thin. The ones that come out are fat and stout. Your eyes fall in and your teeth fall out.